In this tutorial, first we're going to take a look at animating the water texture we added to the top of our pool in one of the previous videos. And then I want to talk about some other texturing techniques and tips to help your textures not look so repetitive and just to help make the overall texturing experience more quick. So first, let's animate this water texture that we've put on top of our pool. It's kind of hard to see here with the room all textured just in white, but it is on our water here that's in the pool. We've used this one texture as a static texture so far. What we want to do is animate that so it looks more like a pool of water. So in the texturing palette, over on the right where all the textures are, down at the bottom, we've looked at a few of these options. We've looked at the double-sided attribute. We've looked at a little bit of the blending options in the last video. What we want to do now is go to animations. Click on that, and it's going to open this new window for us. This is the animation editor. And you can see over here on the side we have our same textures that we have loaded. And our water texture is selected only because I had that selected in the previous window when I clicked the animations button. So we want to create a new animation set here. Up at the top it says animation set. We want to create a new one of those. Press the plus button and it's going to automatically name it animation 0. You can rename this if you want. Just click the pencil icon and you can name it whatever you would like. I named this water pool, just assuming later on if this level were to get bigger, maybe I'd have several different water animated textures. If I call this one water pool, I'll know it's used for the pool, or maybe all the pools if there were multiples. So anyway, we have our animation set made. Now we need to add some frames to the animation, which you can do right here again with this plus button underneath the frames option. So with this first texture selected right here, the first water texture, I'm going to click the plus button. So you can see it added that as an image here in the frames. And then we also get a animated display down here in the preview. It's only animating one frame at the moment, so it just looks static. So as I go through here, it's going to add each of the frames to the list here and to the animation down here. Now this water texture, the frames go in the order of frame 1 here, 2 over here, 3, 4, 5, and so on, down to 8. That's just this texture set. If you were using a different texture set, your frames might go vertically instead of horizontally. There might be 4 instead of 8, or 16 instead of 8. It just depends on the texture set you're using. So for this specific texture set I have loaded, next I'm going to highlight that texture and click the plus button. You can see the preview down here is now animating very fast between those two frames. And we have frames 1 of 2 and 2 of 2. I'm just going to go through here and click the rest of these in the proper order. So that's all 8 frames from this particular animation. And you can see down here, now that we have all 8 frames loaded, we're getting a pretty smooth animated texture of a water-like substance. It's moving really fast for a swimming pool. This probably would even be fast for a river or a stream. So I want to slow it down. And down here in the settings, we can see there's a frames per second option. I'm going to lower this way down to maybe 5. That's probably going to be fine for just the surface of what is essentially a still pool. but you can adjust the speed of your animated frames right here using FPS under settings, and you'll get a preview like I said. So I'm just going to close out of this. Now since I created that animation with this texture selected, it's the texture that we already used in the previous video to texture the top of the water right here. This should already be animated if we view it in the game. So let's do that. I'm going to move Laura right here next to the pool so I don't have to run down the hallway like I've been doing. And let's preview this. This should already be animated. And you can see the water texture is now animated on top of the pool. And since we applied it as a double-sided texture to start with in the previous video, it's also animated, of course, under the water. So that's really all there is to creating an animated texture in Tomb Editor. It's pretty simple. What I want to do now is go into our room that we've already created and just discuss a couple ways to make the textures less repetitive and make the process a little bit easier when it comes to texturing really large rooms. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to turn the texture preview on so we can see what we're looking at. Now if we look at this wall, the texture that we've applied here, you can see it just repeats in the same style on every face of the polygons. So I want to select this texture. Remember, you can hold down the Alt key and click on a texture, and then the editor automatically jumps to it. It's now selected. So in this texture set, we happen to have a couple textures that are similar. There's the one here on the right that's currently selected, but there's also one on the left. So we can use both of these. Let me come in here and mix this up a little bit. You can see just adding this second texture a couple times helped break up the repetitiveness. But you can also control click on textures you've already applied and it'll flip it side to side. So I'm going to flip this top version of this texture. I'm going to hold down Control and click on it. So it now flipped it to the side. It's slightly different. You can tell it's still the same image, but it does help things not look so repetitive. So using these two textures, you could move through your room and begin to not make it so repetitive. You can also rotate textures. Let me scroll back to where we can see more clearly. This texture right here, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click it, and it rotated 90 degrees. Again, and now back to the start. So if your texture, like this one, looks fine in any of the 4 rotations, you can also rotate them. And flip them. And then mix in a different texture. So by using these two textures, rotating them one of 4 times, or flipping them right or left, you can get a lot of variety in there and it won't look so repetitive. You can do the same thing on the floor. Our floor texture right now is very repetitive. There's only one of these textures, but if I come in here and hold down my Shift key and start to just kind of randomly rotate these around, or maybe flip them side to side, Maybe flip and rotate. I'm just kind of doing this quickly. I'm not paying a lot of attention. But if you were paying a lot of attention and wanted to try to get a specific effect, you could do that. But even just by rotating those around a little bit and flipping them, the floor doesn't look nearly as repetitive now as it did by simply just applying the same texture to the floor over and over again in the same orientation. In the pool room, we have some rectangular textures or rectangular faces here on the edge of the pool blocks. If I were to apply this to that face, it's going to be really squished. This whole square texture has been squished into this rectangle. What you really want to do is only take a small portion of this texture to fill this rectangle. So to do that, you can adjust the portion of this texture that is selected by adjusting these handles. And then apply that texture to it. And you can see it's no longer squished. If I were then to apply that there, when I deselect it, the top of the texture and the side of the texture are the same size. So one isn't squished or stretched, but it looks more natural. So you can select a portion of a texture by adjusting these handles. And it doesn't have to be just the top. I drug it up to the top. You could select a portion from the center. Like that. I'm going to have to rotate it. There we go. When I applied it, at first it was stretched, but then if I rotate it, it rotates it into the proper orientation and it's no longer stretched. So those are just a few tips to help with texturing. There's a lot more to cover. I'm sure we will cover it during different videos as different situations arise. But those are some tips to help you get started and help you understand how texturing works a little bit. I hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.